So, hello everyone. I'm here with Ofer Zamir, the CEO of Cellwise, to talk about the radio access network, some of the big trends in 2021, and what we see coming up in 22. The market, has to be said, is on an absolute tear. 2020 was a new record for investment in RAN equipment by operators, and my colleagues at Omdia, who run a global RAN forecast, are expecting a new record for 21. Take a little while to see what the final quarter numbers are, of course. Somewhere around 45 billion to be spent on RAN equipment this year. 22 is looking very strong, perhaps not a new record, but also another very strong year. It's really all on the back of 5G RAN investment. Keep in mind as well, that's just spending on RAN equipment. There's all the investment in spectrum, in sites, in transport network, and so forth. So it's a really big infrastructure investment going in from the sector right now. Ophir, the big kind of story for me, I think, this year and next year particularly, is preparing the RAN for standalone operations. So many dependencies on RAN. I really think operators are going to have to use all the tools in their box to pull this off. What are you seeing in terms of 5G RAN investment and the SA move?
So thank you, Gabriel. Thanks for being here. So you're right. You're absolutely right. Even in 2021, our key customers are already, I'd say, testing the waters with 5G SA, and some of them actually more than testing the waters. I would say initial mass deployments, which on one hand is puzzling because they honestly haven't finished their 5G NSA deployments. They're not anywhere near that, and they're already rushing ahead to 5G SA. My take on this is that a lot of the new enterprise-oriented use cases, scenarios, aka slicing, are really only available in 5G SA. And many of the carriers want to monetize as quickly as they can the spectrum that they have, the kit that they have, by reaching these enterprise-grade use cases sooner rather than later. And that's probably the reason behind this parallel deployment of 5G SA, 5G NSA. What that brings from them, as I think you correctly pointed out, is a degree of complexity that many of them, using the traditional processes and vendors, are really not aware of. Because imagine a network where you have side by side and integrated in a mesh 5G SA, 5G NSA, and 4G. And from a customer journeys perspective, he or she, or it may be a human customer or a machine out there, want to be able to mobilize and seamlessly transfer between areas that's a 5G SA coverage into 5G NSA, and obviously if there's no 5G into LTE. And the whole meshing between those technologies, and sometimes it'll actually be different vendors as well, something that we're seeing in our customers, is a major headache. And that's obviously where we come in and work with our large customers on streamlining that process of deploying 5G SA, 5G NSA on top of the 4G, having 4G, and really allowing our carriers to reach time to market very quickly and to be able to support these holy grails of slicing use cases.
Yeah, huge complexity running NSA, SA, 4G. You know, it's a kind of multi-wrap, multi-stack kind of deployment, and we all want it to be simple and just to work as customers. Great time to be a RAN automation company, I would have thought. Other big theme, we can't really avoid this one, is Open RAN. We've covered it massively at Heavy Reading and Light Reading. I'll give you my views in a moment, but how are you seeing that shape out?
First of all, I'm a big believer. I think the business drivers behind Open RAN are, if anything, they're stronger now than they were a few years back. The whole concept of allowing carriers to quickly deploy what's called RApps, but let's call it pieces of logic, okay, applications on top of their network by themselves without making a big project out of it, self-programmability, then being able to pick and choose vendors, best of breed in the various areas. being able to build really their own networks and full flexibility, and obviously reducing the TCO, those drivers are all there. And Open RAN, or the various flavors of Open RAN, attempts to serve that. What we are seeing is that it's a journey. It's not a binary thing. Some of these standards are already well tested. Some of them are only being put together now, and some of them are just still pies in the skies. So what we see is that if carriers say, okay, we'll do everything the old way until Open RAN will be fully mature, they'll have more than a few years to wait for that. And maybe it's the right strategy for them. I'm not saying it isn't, but a full standardized Open RAN will take a while. We see other carriers, and I don't want to name names, but many of them are our customers. They're taking a more transitory approach where, okay, they want a piece. The O1 is there, so let's integrate O1, and all the rest of the APIs are non-standard. And then when that will be standardized, they want to upgrade that. I think that puts a huge bar to the vendors in the industry, including Cellwise, but not only, all the vendors, to allow that migration process towards O-RAN while allowing the carriers to reap at least some of the benefits of O-RAN now. And I see carriers taking that approach, and we as vendors need to be future-proof and future-ready, which are terms that are often abused, but here they have to really mean something. So that's my view on where O-RAN is going.
Yeah, good stuff. I mean, I think you certainly agree in the sense that it's going to be a kind of a phased approach. I think people will, even if you introduce Open RAN in whichever form, whether it's O1 or something more dramatic, I guess, that you're going to end up running all of the existing network for many years. We just talked about how there's been this huge investment already, so it's going to be a little bit like we talked about before. You're running in parallel streams in the same network, even if not adjacent sites and so forth. So I think that's going to be quite a big operational lift for a lot of operators in terms of just how they manage that introduction. I actually think on a really broader point, starting to think more about Open RAN as sort of shorthand for a next gen RAN in many ways.
Yeah.
That's kind of the view that I've come to over this year or so. Other thing, last question. You mentioned there, I think you mentioned RAN programmability, and that's quite a broad topic. In Open RAN, it's via the RIC and so forth, but exists already in CSON and so forth. How do you see programmability? You know, what's the state of play today, and how do you introduce the next phase of automation here?
So let's talk about the business drivers first. So in terms of business drivers, there's quite a few carriers out there that they see what's been happening in the IT world for a few years now, that open platforms came into play, and enterprises can develop their own capabilities on top of these open platforms. And carriers have been wishing that would be the case in RAN for many, many years. Traditionally, if I'm a carrier in the US and I have a very cool idea, I don't know what it may be. For example, I want to give a special optimization to voice over LTE callers. What I need to do is I can think about the idea, but eventually I need to call one of my NEPs and make a whole big project out of it. And then that project costs money, of course, because Ericsson's in the world and because they don't work for free. So I need to go through the budgeting cycle, which in a carrier is a very long one. And at the end of the day, maybe 10 months later, I get a budget approval. In other words, every new idea that came up from the field turned into a project, and most of these projects were left on the vine to die, really, because they weren't budgeted. So carriers have been pining to be able to really develop their own stuff for a few years now. And we talked about Open RAN. Open RAN, that indeed is one of the promises of Open RAN. However, in order for that to happen, there's a lot of other things that need to be standardized. So what we see with, if you want, our pre-ORAN Open RAN, which is really what our automation platform is all about, we developed a very strong programmability capability, and quite a few of our large customers are now openly using it. So their data scientists, their radio engineering folks can say, we have an idea, and they go into a serverless ecosystem, just like you do in Google or Amazon, and develop that idea by themselves. And this is really picking up. And it is so successful that I see in a while that most of these applications over time will be self-developed by carriers or even by third parties that will put them in a marketplace and allow carriers to license them and enjoy them. And I think that's a great development for the industry. It really allows innovation and creativity to go big time into this historically very stolid market, I would say.
Good stuff. Ofir Zamir from Cellwise, thanks very much.
Thank you, Gabriel. Have a good one.